In the vast, silent cathedral of the Galactic Council Chamber, a single, desperate voice echoed. It was a soft, keening sound of pure terror, repeating a litany of doom that had become the chamber's new, haunting heartbeat. "This is Haven Colony. We are under attack. Please help us. They are moving toward our central cities. We cannot fight them." The words, emanating from a lumen, a being of gentle, living light from the galaxy's peaceful fringe, coiled around the 12 senior counselors like a ghostly serpent, tightening with each loop. For 72 hours, it had seeped into the polished stone and shimmering metal of the room, a reminder of a horror unfolding in the distant dark. Like, subscribe, share, and comment to follow every moment of this galactic reckoning. Ambassador Gray, a man whose slender frame seemed carved from anxiety itself, stood before the curved obsidian table. His datapad was a cold weight in his trembling hands. "The message has been repeating for 3 days," he stated, his voice cutting through the uncomfortable silence. "By now, the Void Raiders have likely carved half the planet into ruins." He saw it in his mind's eye. Crystalline cities, architectures of light and harmony, shattered into glittering dust under the boots of merciless scavengers. Admiral Pike, a granite block of a man in his stark uniform, gave a single grim nod. His was the only military bearing in a room of philosophers and diplomats. The Raiders operate on a simple creed: harvest, enslave, obliterate. They leave no witnesses, only silent graves and cold cinders. The head counselor, an ancient being with skin like petrified oak and eyes that held the slow wisdom of glaciers, leaned forward, the weight of millennia in his sigh. "Our hearts weep for the lumen, Ambassador, but Haven orbits at the very rim of charted space. Our peacekeeping fleets would arrive to a graveyard, their engines still hot from a futile journey." It was the polite, pragmatic death sentence Gray had heard recited by every species he'd begged. The Orit cloaked in ritual, the Mandari lost in hibernative dreams, the Ziv pleading technological impotence. A desperate resolve crystallized within Gray. He had one card left to play, a card that felt like heresy in this sanctum of cultivated order. "There is one option we haven't tried," he said, the words tasting of ozone and risk. He let the silence stretch, feeling the council's collective dread congeal. Earth. The chamber didn't just fall quiet. It became a vacuum, swallowing even the ghostly plea from Haven. The very air seemed to recoil. "The humans," the head counselor breathed, the word itself a curse and a question. "They have ships," Gray pressed on, a man now committed to his own dangerous idea. "Fast ones. Their system is a stellar stepping stone closer to Haven than any of ours." "They are barbarians," Counselor Thren erupted, her feathered crest flaring into a crimson sunburst of agitation. "They crawled from a Class 12 death world, a planet that sculpted them with poison, asteroid impacts, and predators with teeth like daggers. And instead of perishing with dignified grace, they fought. They wrestled their own world into submission. Violence is their first language, Ambassador, not their last resort." Admiral Pike cleared his throat, a sound like grinding stones. "Counselor Thren is not incorrect about their nature, but they possess one anomalous, well-documented trait. They respond to distress signals. Always. It is a cultural imperative, a compulsion woven into their very identity." "A compulsion to what?" Thren shot back. "In the 5 years since they stumbled into our community, they have diverted their vessels 11 times to answer such calls. And 11 times, they have left plasma-scorched debris and broken hulls in their wake. Only the debris of aggressors," Pike countered, his voice low and steady. "Never of the victims. They hear a cry, and they answer with a fury that is terrifyingly specific." The head counselor raised a gnarled hand, and the rising tempest stilled. Even if this madness proceeded, what could one planet, however ferocious, accomplish? The Void Raiders command a fleet, Pike and Gray exchanged a glance, a silent conversation between a strategist and a desperate idealist. It was Pike who answered, his words dropping into the silence with the finality of a tomb seal. The humans do not fight like the rest of us. They are a different kind of variable in the galactic equation. The chamber exploded. Outrage, morbid curiosity, and profound fear clashed in a cacophony of overlapping voices. The head counselor finally restored order with the piercing chime of the attention bell, a sound that seemed to fracture the tension into manageable shards. "We will vote," he declared, his voice weary. "Shall we formally request Earth's assistance for the lumen of Haven?" The tally was a razor's edge. 7-4, 5 against. Gray felt a wave of relief so potent it left him lightheaded. Yet it was poisoned by the chilling certainty of the backlash to come. His fingers flew across his data pad, drafting the formal request, etching words that felt like opening a cage to an unknown, magnificent beast. He sent it through the encrypted channel reserved for the galaxy's most unpredictable members. An uneasy pall settled over the council. They anticipated delay, a bureaucratic silence, or perhaps a terse, politically couched refusal. Earth had been a sphinx since its arrival, its few representatives observing council proceedings with unsettling, unreadable calm. The reply arrived in 3 minutes. Not hours. Minutes. Gray's breath hitched as he read the stark, unadorned text aloud, his voice a dry whisper in the stunned quiet. SOS acknowledged. HMS Nemesis en route. TA 72 hours. Confusion rippled through the counselors. HMS? Queried the head counselor. His Majesty's ship, Pike translated, his brow furrowed. A traditional designation. But Nemesis? That is not a name from their civilian registry. A junior aide, pale and wide-eyed, scurried in and whispered urgently into Pike's ear. The Admiral's own eyes narrowed, then widened by a fraction, the greatest show of shock his disciplined face would allow. "The Nemesis," he announced, the words deliberate, "is not a freighter or a diplomatic envoy. It is a military vessel, a destroyer." The silence this time was absolute, a physical weight. "They're sending a warship," the head counselor whispered, the disbelief in his voice so profound it was almost reverence. "Not mediators, not healers, a hammer." "I believe," Pike said, choosing each syllable with care, "the humans have interpreted our request through the lens of their own unique philosophy. They perceive a people under the knife. Their concept of aid is the interposition of an unbreakable shield." "A shield?" Thren scoffed, the sound brittle. "That is an instrument of annihilation they're dispatching." Gray looked down at his pad, at the 3 brutal lines of text. "No pleasantries." No requests for clarification or resource compensation. Just a declarative statement of intent. "We heard you. We're coming." It was the galactic equivalent of a deep, resonant growl from the dark of a cave. A promise or a threat, perhaps both. "We should alert the lumen," Gray suggested, his voice thin. "Tell them help is coming." "Are we certain it is help?" the head counselor asked, voicing the dread coiled in every heart. "Should we not seek immediate clarification from Earth regarding their intentions?" Pike shook his head. A slow, fatalistic arc. The Nemesis has already departed Earth space at maximum burn. They will not slow for questions. The decision, and its consequences, are now in motion. Another aide entered, bearing a single data crystal. Pike took it and slotted it into the chamber's main projector. A hologram bloomed into existence above the table, drawing a collective, sharp intake of breath. It was the Nemesis. The image, captured from extreme range during a fleeting joint exercise, showed a vessel of predatory elegance. Sleek, matte black, and angular, it seemed to drink the light around it. No obvious weapon ports marred its seamless hull, yet it exuded a palpable aura of menace, a silent, coiled tension that made the air in the council chamber feel several degrees colder. "It looks hungry," A counselor whispered. Admiral, the head counselor said, his ancient eyes fixed on the rotating specter. In your professional assessment, what transpires when this stick reaches haven? Pike studied the hologram, his face an unreadable mask. Finally, he spoke, invoking an old human proverb. They have a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. It advocates for peaceful discourse, backed by overwhelming force. He gestured to the image of the black ship. Counselors, this is not a stick. This is a tectonic plate, lifted and ready to fall. The Void Raiders, who believe themselves the apex predators of the void, are about to learn a lesson every creature on Earth knows in its bones. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing in the forest is not the obvious hunter, but the quiet shadow that has been hunting the hunters since the dawn of time. In the background, the lumen's distress call began its loop once more. Please, anyone, help us. But the words were transformed. They were no longer a plea into an uncaring void. They were a summons. And the thing that had been summoned was now streaking through the hyperspace lanes, a sliver of darkness from a death world, coming to answer. As the session adjourned, Ambassador Gray remained, staring at the frozen image of the Nemesis. Most species would have sent their kindest souls, their most eloquent voices. The humans were sending their warriors, their problem solvers forged in the crucible of perpetual threat. Did that make them monsters, or the most necessary angels imaginable? Perhaps, Gray thought with a shiver that was not entirely fear. They were something the galaxy had not yet coined a term for, a paradox of protector and predator. The Void Raiders would be the first to discover what that meant. And on the bridge of the HMS Nemesis, Captain Alara Ree stood as still as a statue, her hands clasped behind her back. Before her, through the main viewport, the stars bled into luminous streaks as her ship tore a scar through the fabric of reality. The bridge was a temple of quiet intensity, humming with focused energy. In 3 days, they would reach haven. In 3 days, they would introduce a new calculus to a corner of space that understood only cruelty and submission. The hunt was on, and the hunters, for the first time, had no idea what was coming for them. The bridge of the HMS Nemesis was a study in controlled tension, a silence so profound it seemed to vibrate with latent energy. Captain Alara Ree stood at its heart, a figure of poised stillness amidst the streaking starlight of hyperspace. Her eyes, the color of glacial ice, remained fixed on the luminous distortion ahead, but her mind was already at their destination, calculating, anticipating. 3 days of relentless travel at the very edge of their drive's tolerance had brought them to the precipice of the Haven system. 72 hours in which a gentle civilization had likely been methodically dismantled by beings who saw beauty only as something to be broken and sold. Time to arrival? Ree's voice cut the quiet, calm and clean as a scalpel. 26 minutes, Captain, replied Lieutenant Foster from the comm station, his youthful face etched with the gravity of the repeating distress signal that was their only soundtrack. The Lumen broadcast continues. No change in the message. Ree gave a single, sharp nod. Tactical display. Commander Kalen Stone, her first officer, activated the holographic projector. In the bridge's center, the Haven system materialized, a serene ballet of planets orbiting a gentle star. Haven itself glowed a soft, oceanic blue at its heart, a beautiful world, and upon it, 7 crimson icons pulsed like infected wounds in high orbit, the Void Raider fleet. Their formation is scattered, Stone observed, his tactical mind dissecting the pattern. No defensive cohesion. They're not expecting an intervention. Why would they? Ree's voice was soft, almost conversational. The nearest Galactic Council outpost is a fortnight away at best speed. They believe they own the clock. But we're not from the Council, Stone replied, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. No, Ree agreed, the word holding a universe of implication. We are not. The bridge door slid open with a whisper, admitting Dr. Anya Wells, the ship's xenobiologist. Her white lab coat was a stark contrast to the bridge crew's shadowy uniforms. "Captain, my preliminary analysis on the lumen is complete," she said, her academic tone unable to mask her distress. "They are even more vulnerable than our briefings suggested." Ree gestured for her to continue, her gaze never leaving the tactical display. "The lumen evolved on a world without predation, without natural catastrophe," Wells explained, calling up images of tall, willowy beings whose skin emitted a gentle, intrinsic luminescence. "Their biology is built on light and peaceful symbiosis. They possess a limited empathic telepathy. They can sense emotional states and the shape of surface thoughts, a communal awareness." "Telepathy," Stone interjected, his concern immediate. "Can they probe our minds?" "Not in the invasive sense," Wells clarified. "They feel the emotional weather of a mind, not the specific contents." "But therein lies the problem, Captain." She hesitated, choosing her words with care. "The lumen have no neurological framework for violence. It is as alien to them as breathing vacuum. When they sense us, our capacity for combat, our tactical aggression, our willingness to enact violence, it may terrify them as profoundly as the raiders themselves." Ree absorbed this, her expression unreadable. "So, we have crossed the galaxy to rescue a people who may recoil from their rescuers, who may not comprehend the nature of the help being offered." "Precisely," Wells confirmed, her voice heavy. "And there is a more devastating corollary. Their telepathic bond is a shared experience. When a lumen is killed, every other lumen within range doesn't just learn of it, they feel the death. The raiders aren't just committing physical genocide. They are orchestrating a continuous, psychic atrocity with every life they extinguish." A cold fury settled over the bridge, a silent, shared vow that traveled between the crew members without a word being spoken. Ree's jaw tightened infinitesimally. "Commander Stone, the raiders." Stone adjusted the hologram, bringing up files on the enemy. Grotesque hybrid ships and images of various alien species, united by the cruelty in their eyes. "The Void Raiders are a conglomerate of outcasts and psychopaths from a dozen worlds," he narrated. "They rally under a single commander, Dusk." The display centered on a tall, four-armed being with obsidian skin and eyes that burned like dying embers. Formerly a decorated officer in the Tar Fleet, court-martialed for excessive brutality against civilians, he stole a warship and vanished. He spent a decade gathering a legion of those who find pleasure in the suffering of others. "Tactical profile?" Ree asked. "Standard pirate doctrine refined to a science," Stone replied. "Target isolated, resource-rich worlds with minimal defenses. Plunder, enslave, and scorch the earth. They operate on the principle of zero witnesses. Their reputation is their shield." "Until today," Ree murmured, the words a promise. "Preparing to exit hyperspace, Captain," the navigator called out. "Battle stations," Ree ordered, her voice rising only slightly, yet it carried to every corner of the ship. Lights dimmed to a crimson-tinged operational gloom. The soft hum of the ship shifted, deepening into a war-ready thrum. Crew moved with a silent, lethal grace born of countless drills. "Activate stealth systems upon exit. Full emissions blackout." "I want us to be a ghost," Ree commanded. "Stealth systems primed," the tactical officer confirmed. "Exit in 5, 4, 1. The universe snapped back into focus. The streaking stars resolved into fixed points of cold fire as the Nemesis slid into normal space at the system's barren edge. Its specially engineered hull absorbed electromagnetic radiation and light, rendering it not just invisible to sensors, but a living shadow, a patch of deeper darkness against the void. "Stealth active. We are running silent. Long-range scanners. Focus on Haven." The main viewer shifted, and the beautiful world filled the screen. Blue oceans, verdant continents. A portrait of peace now defiled. Even from this distance, ugly, Dark smears of smoke rose from multiple points on the surface like weeping wounds. Magnify Sector 7. The image zoomed with terrifying clarity. It showed a city, or what remained of one. Elegant, spiraling towers of what appeared to be grown crystal lay in shattered, glittering ruins. Fires guttered in their hollow skeletons. Like carrion insects, small raider landing craft moved between the structures, descending to loot and capture before ascending with their grim cargo. Life signs, Ree's voice was taut, concentrated in what appeared to be makeshift detention compounds. The sensor officer reported, his own voice thick with disgust. Thousands of lumen signatures. Raider ground forces are moving in systematic sweep patterns. Ree's eyes danced across the tactical display, analyzing the 7 Raider capital ships. One, a smaller Corvette-class vessel, had drifted away from the main cluster, performing a lazy patrol arc on the system's fringe. A sentry, bored and isolated, a cold, sharp smile touched Ree's lips. Perfect. She turned to Stone. First, we need intelligence. That isolated ship. Plot an intercept course. Minimal power. Drift us into engagement range. Let us introduce ourselves properly. As the Nemesis, a sliver of predatory darkness, began its silent glide toward the unsuspecting Raider corvette, designated the Viper on its transponder, reopened a secure channel to the Special Operations Bay. The feed showed a scene of methodical, quiet preparation. 12 soldiers, encased in matte black combat armor that seemed to swallow the light, were conducting final weapons checks. Their movements were economical, precise, devoid of the bluster often associated with warriors. These were craftsmen. Sergeant Miller, a tall, broad-shouldered man, looked up, his face grim and focused behind his visor. Captain, prepare your team for ground deployment. Primary objective: infiltrate the main detention center, secure Lumen hostages, and gather tactical intelligence on Raider ground strength and dispositions. Rules of engagement, Captain? Miller's voice was flat, professional. The Lumen are to be protected at all costs. Absolute priority. Ree paused, her ice-blue eyes hardening. As for the Raiders, Sergeant, use your discretion. But remember, they ignited this fire. We are here to put it out. Permanently. Miller gave a single, understanding nod. The transmission cut. Back on the bridge, the Nemesis had closed to point-blank range of the Viper. The Raider crew, complacent in their dominance, remained utterly oblivious to the shadow that had fallen over them. In range, Captain, Ree took a slow, centering breath. This was the threshold. Until this moment, they had been observers. With her next words, they would become active participants in a narrative of salvation and retribution. The Lumen had cried out for gentle helpers. They were about to receive something else entirely. Disengage stealth systems. Target their primary and secondary engine nacelles only. Surgical precision. I want them dead in the water, not dust. The Nemesis awoke. Its black hull shimmered as systems flared to full, hungry life. To the crew of the Viper, it must have seemed as if a piece of the void itself had coalesced into a nightmare shape, materializing from nothing a mere kilometer off their port bow. Open a channel. Broad spectrum. On the Viper's bridge, chaos erupted. Alarms shrilled as their sensors screamed at the sudden appearance of the massive, unknown warship. Captain Fong, a scarred reptilian with a missing eye scald, surged from his command chair. What in the abyss is that? Before his crew could respond, the main viewer flickered to life. It showed a human woman with sharp features and eyes that held the absolute calm of a deep, still ocean. Her voice, when it came, was clear, firm, and devoid of any negotiable quality. This is Captain Alara Ree of the Earth vessel Nemesis. You are conducting illegal operations against a protected species. Power down your weapons and engines. Surrender immediately. You have 1 minute to comply. The message ended, leaving a silence more threatening than any roar. Fong. his initial shock morphing into rage, snarled at his comms officer. "Patch me through to Commander Dusk. Now!" A secondary screen lit up, revealing Commander Dusk aboard his flagship, the Scourge. He listened as Fong babbled out the situation. A slow, contemptuous smile spread across Dusk's face. "One ship," he rumbled, his voice like grinding boulders. "The vaunted Galactic Council sends a single vessel to chastise us? This is their might." He leaned toward the pickup, addressing the Nemesis directly. "Human, tell your bureaucratic masters that Haven and everything on it is mine. Turn your pretty shadow ship around and flee. I am feeling merciful today." On the Nemesis bridge, Ree listened, her expression unchanged. She did not reply. Instead, she glanced at Stone. "They're not taking us seriously." "Good," Ree said, that faint, cold smile returning. "Target locked. Aye, Captain. Engines painted. Fire." A single, brilliant lance of coherent energy lanced out from the Nemesis. It was not a barrage, not a show of force. It was a statement. It struck the Viper with micrometer precision, shearing through armor and conduit. The Raider ship's engines flared in a brief, violent gout of plasma and died, leaving the vessel adrift and dark, a floating tomb. Direct hit. Engines disabled. Life support nominal. "Now," Ree said quietly, "we have their attention." On the tactical display, the 6 remaining Raider capital ships ceased their orbital predation. As one, they turned, like a pack of wolves spotting a new intruder. Thrusters flared as they moved to encircle the Nemesis, their weapon ports glowing with malevolent energy. "Standard encirclement pattern," Stone observed. "They mean to trap and overwhelm." "Predictable," Ree noted. "Too predictable." She turned to her navigator. "Lieutenant, prepare hyperspace jump sequence alpha. Coordinates. Directly astern of the command ship, the Scourge." The navigator's eyes widened. "Captain, a microjump inside a gravity well. The positional calculations, the margin for error." "The calculations are already in the system, Lieutenant," Ree interrupted, her voice leaving no room for debate. "This is what we trained for. Execute on my mark." The Raider circle tightened. Energy readings spiked as their weapons reached optimal firing range. "Execute jump." Space itself seemed to flinch. The Nemesis vanished in a localized distortion of light and fractured physics. On the Raider bridges, targeting systems wailed as their lock was broken. Before their commanders could process the anomaly, space rippled directly behind the Scourge. The Nemesis reappeared, having traveled less than 1,000 kilometers in a heartbeat, now positioned in the blind spot of the largest Raider vessel. Fire at will. All forward batteries. The Nemesis unleashed hell. Concentrated plasma and magnetically accelerated projectiles hammered into the Scourge's unprotected stern. Shields flared and failed. Hull plates vaporized. The Raider formation dissolved into pandemonium. "They're disoriented," Stone reported, a fierce satisfaction in his tone. "They've never seen intrasystem jumps of that accuracy." "Again," Ree ordered, her voice a steady drumbeat. "Jump sequence beta. Coordinates. High zenith above Raider 3. The dance of death continued. The Nemesis was no longer a ship. It was a phantom, a blade flickering in and out of reality, striking from impossible angles. The Raiders fired wildly, their disciplined formation crumbling into a panicked, uncoordinated spray of energy. On the surface of Haven, Sergeant Miller and his team moved like extensions of the gathering twilight. Their stealth dropship had deposited them 5 clicks from the primary detention center, a once beautiful crystalline agora now ringed with crude fortifications. From the edge of a shattered garden, Miller surveyed the target. Raider guards, lax in their unquestioned dominance, patrolled with arrogant slowness. 6 at the main gate, whispered Specialist Harris, his scout's eyes missing nothing. 4 on the roof, basic motion sensors. overconfident. Miller gave a series of hand signals. Standard breach. Non-lethal priority. Remember the lumen. The team melted into the ruins, becoming shadows among shadows. They struck without warning. Stun grenades emitted silent pulses of neural disrupting energy. Electrodarts hissed through the air. The raider guards at the gate crumpled mid-conversation, their weapons clattering to the ground unheard. On the roof, the 4 lookouts were neutralized by soldiers who seemed to materialize from the very stone. The entire outer perimeter was secured in under 40 seconds without a single lethal discharge or raised alarm. Perimeter secure. Moving to interior. What they found inside the main holding chamber stopped them cold. The lumen were not huddled in terrified clusters as anticipated. Hundreds of them stood near the sealed entrance, their bodies emitting a soft, synchronized glow, a silent, collective vigilance. An elder lumen, taller than the others, his skin shimmering with the complexity of an opal, stepped forward. His large, luminous eyes held not fear, but a profound, searching curiosity. "We felt your minds approaching," the lumen said, his voice a gentle resonance in the air, not a sound heard so much as felt. "You are different, a symphony of ordered chaos." Miller slowly lowered his rifle, a gesture he hoped they understood. "I am Sergeant Miller. We are humans. From Earth. We're here to help you." The elder studied him. "I am called Bright. Your minds, they are strange to us. You hold the intention of violence, yet it is sheathed in purpose. It is for protection." It wasn't a question. "Yes," Miller confirmed. "We fight so others don't have to." Before Bright could respond, external alarms shattered the tense quiet. A harsh, electronic ululation that spoke of discovered breaches and rallied foes. Through the translucent walls, they could see the landing lights of more raider dropships piercing the dusk. "They know we're here," Harris said, his weapon coming up. "Defensive positions," Miller barked. "Protect the lumen. This is now a fortress." The raiders came in a roaring, undisciplined tide, expecting to smash a handful of insurgents. What they met was a controlled tempest. Miller's team fought with a synergy that transformed the Crystal Hall into a lethal maze. They used the refractive surfaces for deceptive cover, set overlapping fields of fire, and moved with a communication that bordered on telepathy itself. Where the raiders relied on brute aggression, the humans responded with paralyzing efficiency. From a shielded position, Miller watched a squad of raiders using a cluster of terrified lumen as living shields. He switched his rifle to a specialized low-yield setting and turned to Bright, who had remained astonishingly calm beside him. "Elder Bright, your telepathy. Can you project to your people?" To all in that group at once. Bright's glow pulsed. "If we join our focus, yes, we can share a simple impression." "On my signal," Miller said, holding up 3 fingers. "Send them one command. Drop." Bright closed his eyes. Around him, several other lumen joined hands, their collective light intensifying into a fierce, silent beacon. Miller counted down. 3, 2, 1. As1. Every lumen being used as a shield dropped to the floor. In the stunned half-second that followed, Miller's team fired. Precise stun blasts dropped the exposed raiders before their fingers could tighten on triggers. A wave of awe, palpable and warm, flowed from the gathered lumen. Bright looked at Miller, his luminescence dancing with a new, fierce light. "We have never used our gift in such collaboration." We showed them a thought. You turned it into a weapon. "Sometimes," Miller said, already moving to the next threat, "the best weapon is a new idea." Above them, in the cold dark, the Nemesis danced its deadly ballet. But below, on the scarred surface of a peaceful world, a new partnership was being forged in the crucible of necessity, between those who had never conceived of violence and those who had mastered its every terrible nuance to one singular end: to make it stop. The raiders, who had known only the fear they inflicted, were beginning to feel the first cold trickle of a different kind of fear. The fear of the outmatched. The fear of the hunted. The equilibrium of battle shattered 3 hours in. A brutal reminder that even ghosts could bleed. A cluster of raider ships, their commanders finally forging a crude semblance of coordination, anticipated the Nemesis's last microjump coordinate. As the human vessel ripped back into normal space, 3 intersecting beams of plasma and kinetic fire met it in a screaming confluence of light and fury. The impact hammered the Nemesis like the fist of a god. On the bridge, Captain Ree was thrown against the restraints of her command chair as the deck bucked violently beneath her. A cacophony of damage alarms screamed a chorus of pain, sharp, digital shrieks that spoke of ruptured decks and venting atmosphere. "Damage report!" Ree's voice cut through the din, steady as bedrock. Commander Stone gripped his console, knuckles white. "Direct hit to portside lateral armor. Hull breach on Deck 3, Sections 7 through 9. Automatic blast seals engaged. Casualty reports coming in. Lieutenant Gray is down. Medical team en route." His eyes scanned the flickering tactical hollow. Shields at 62%. Portside railgun battery is offline. Plasma conduit ruptured. "Enemy status?" Ree asked, her gaze locked on the viewer where the raider ships were already wheeling for another pass. 2 raider vessels disabled and drifting, Stone replied. 5 remain combat effective, including the Scourge. They're adapting, Captain. Dusk is directing them, trying to pattern our jumps. Ree gave a slight, acknowledging nod. The enemy was learning. A static strategy was now a death sentence. She opened a channel to the surface. "Sergeant Miller, status update." Now, on the surface, in the choking dust of a shattered plaza, Miller ducked behind the smoldering wreckage of a raider skiff. The initial momentum of their rescue had stalled against the anvil of the raiders' final redoubt. The ancient lumen temple of harmonic resonance, a magnificent structure of spiraling, organic crystal, now served as Commander Dusk's fortress and prison. Intelligence wrung from captured raiders painted a grim picture. The remaining lumen hostages, over 200, were held within, and the entire structure was wired with enough explosive charges to turn the temple into a mile-high funeral pyre. "Captain, we've secured 3 detention centers and freed approximately 4,000 lumen," Miller reported, his voice a low grunt over the sound of distant energy fire. "But Dusk has fallen back to the central temple with the last hostages. He's using them as a shield. Threatens to detonate the charges if we advance." Beside Miller, Elder Bright stood with his eyes closed, his form glowing with an intense, focused light. Other lumens surrounded him, their hands linked, creating a silent network of perception. "There are 213 of our brothers and sisters inside." Bright's voice was a strained whisper in Miller's mind. "Their fear is a cold flame, the one called Dusk. His mind is a storm of anger and spite. He feels cornered." Over the comms, Ree's silence was thoughtful. "Can you assault the position, Sergeant?" "Not without guaranteeing the hostages' deaths, Captain. The explosives are rigged to deadman switches and motion sensors. It's a perfect trap." Another pause, shorter this time. "Hold your position. Dr. Wells is inbound to your location via fast mover. She has a theory. Give her whatever she needs." True to Ree's word, a sleek, arrowhead-shaped shuttle screamed through the smoke-hazed sky 20 minutes later, settling in a clearing with a whisper of anti-gravs. Dr. Anya Wells emerged, her white coat smudged with soot, her face etched with exhaustion and fierce determination. She carried reinforced equipment cases that she set down with a thud. "Sergeant." "Elder Bright," she greeted, her words rapid, fired by intellectual adrenaline. "I've been analyzing the telepathic emission data from our lumen allies. I believe we can weaponize it, not as an attack, but as a camouflage." She popped open a case, revealing rows of silvery discs, humming with a soft, piezoelectric vibration. "Neural disruptor emitters," standard medical tech for treating synaptic disorders. But I've recalibrated them. She pointed toward the distant temple, where the glint of sensor arrays could be seen mounted on its spires. Those are multispectral sensors. They track motion, thermal signatures, even neurological activity for targeting. They filter out background noise. Wells looked directly at Bright, her eyes alight. Your people can project emotional and sensory impressions, correct? Not just receive them. We can broadcast simple emotional states or images to those who are receptive, Bright confirmed, his glow flickering with curiosity. You don't need them to be receptive, Wells said, a scientist's grin touching her lips. You just need to flood every available wavelength with telepathic noise. Create a psychic smokescreen so dense their sensors can't distinguish a single human heartbeat from the simulated panic of 1,000. They'll see phantoms in every shadow. Miller understood instantly. A diversion. While they're trying to parse a million false signals, they won't see the one real one coming. Precisely. Wells turned to Bright. Can your people do this? Not as a weapon, but as a shield. A cloak for your kin inside. Bright communed silently with the circle of lumen around him. Their collective light pulsed in a slow, rhythmic dialogue. After a moment, he turned back, his luminescence firm. We have never used our voice to shout, only to sing. But to save our children, we will learn to shout. As Wells began organizing the lumen into a wide, concentric circle on a hillside overlooking the temple, Miller pulled his team aside. The diversion gets us past the sensors, not through 3-foot-thick crystal walls. We need an entrance they aren't watching. An elderly female lumen, her light a soft, silver-tinged aura, stepped forward. Her name was Shimmer. The temple is not just what rises into the sky, she intoned. Its roots are deep. There are passages below from the first growth. Forgotten ways. I can guide you. In orbit, the Nemesis continued its harrowing dance, but the steps were growing more perilous. The 5 remaining raider ships had abandoned the chase, forming a tight, mutually supportive defensive sphere around the scourge. They had stopped biting at the shadow and now presented a wall of thorns, conserving power, forcing the Nemesis to come to them. They think they've solved us, Rhea observed, studying the tactical plot. A slow, dangerous smile touched her lips. Let's give them a new problem. She opened the ship-wide comm, all hands. Prepare for silent running protocol Omega. Engineering, on my mark, I want a full, cascading system shutdown. Make it look catastrophic. Let them think they've finally scored a killing blow. Commander Stone shot her a look. That's a hell of a gamble, Captain. The best gambles, Rhea replied, her eyes never leaving the enemy formation, are the ones where you've already stacked the deck. Open a channel to Sergeant Miller. Beneath the temple, in air that tasted of ancient dust and damp stone, Miller's team moved in single file through a narrow, twisting passage. The light from their helmet lamps carved tunnels in the absolute black, reflecting off wet, crystalline walls. Shimmer glided ahead, her natural bioluminescence a will-o'-the-wisp guide. These ways were used for silent contemplation, for journeys inward. Her voice echoed softly. They lead to the chamber of first light, the heart of the temple. The passage ended at a vertical shaft. Miller's scanner indicated they were directly beneath the temple's main chamber. Above, a disk of faint, filtered light hinted at a hidden entrance. Miller checked his chronometer. All elements stand by. We move on my mark only. His comm bead vibrated. Sergeant. Captain Rhee's voice was calm, a stark contrast to the tension in the tunnels. We're initiating our play up here. Operation commences in 5 minutes. Understood, Captain. We are in position. As Shimmer departed to rejoin Bright and Wells, Miller faced his 12 soldiers. Their faces in the gloom were set, resolved. Close quarters. Hostiles mixed with hostages. Precision is everything. Lumen will blind their tech, the Nemesis will blind their fleet. Our job is to be the knife in that moment of blindness. Secure the hostages. Capture Dusk if possible. But do not let him trigger those charges. On the hillside, over 100 lumens sat in interlinked circles, their bodies beginning to glow with gathering intensity. The air crackled with a static that raised the hair on Dr. Wells's arms. Focus not on individuals, she guided, her voice hushed. Focus on the emotion of panic, of a stampede. Project the idea of 1,000 bodies moving at once. Build the wave, and on my signal, release it. In the silent void, the HMS Nemesis died. Every external light winked out. Engine signatures vanished. Heat blooms dissipated as emergency coolant flooded external systems. The great black ship went utterly dark and inert, a piece of cosmic driftwood caught in the gravitational pull of the Raider formation. Tumbling slowly toward its center on the Scourge, Commander Dusk watched the sensor feed, a slow grin splitting his face. A lucky hit. Their core is breached. They're dead in the void. He leaned forward. All vessels hold fire. Let them drift. I want to see the life bleed out of them up close. Miller's chronometer hit 0 to go in orbit. The dead Nemesis erupted back to life at the heart of the Raider sphere. Every weapon that could bear fired simultaneously point-blank into the vulnerable flanks of the surrounding ships. At the same moment, its engines flared, not for a jump, but for a brutal lateral shove that sent it crashing through their formation like a bull through a crystal lattice. On the hillside, Dr. Wells dropped her hand. Now! The lumen released their gathered energy. It was not a sound, but a silent, psychic thunderclap, a tidal wave of fabricated terror, confusion, and sensory overload radiated outward, washing over the temple. Every Raider sensor screen inside the fortress dissolved into a storm of false positives. Ghostly heat signatures bloomed everywhere. Motion detectors screamed at stationary walls. Neural trackers registered a riot of impossible brain activity. And beneath the chamber of first light, Sergeant Miller's team blew the ancient seal and erupted into heaven. The chamber was a breathtaking vault of natural crystal, refracting the light of Haven's sun into 1,000,000 rainbow shards. In its center, huddled together, were the lumen hostages, their light dimmed by fear. Around them, Raider guards clutched weapons, their faces masks of confusion as their helmet displays and console feeds became useless sheets of electronic snow. On a raised dais, Commander Dusk roared in fury, all four arms gesticulating wildly. Report! What is happening? Sensors are gone, Commander. We're blind. It's like 1,000 minds are screaming right outside. At that moment of perfect disorientation, the humans struck. They fell upon the guards like wolves among startled sheep. Stun blasts hissed, dropping Raiders before they could orient their weapons. The close quarters fighting was swift, brutal, and shockingly quiet. The smack of polymer on armor, the grunt of expelled breath, the thud of falling bodies. Dusk saw the tide turning. With a snarl, he lunged into the huddle of hostages and snatched up a small lumen child, his lower hands wrapping around its slender form, an upper hand pressing the muzzle of a plasma pistol against its glowing temple. The child's light flickered wildly in terror. "Stop!" Dusk bellowed, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "Or I paint the ceiling with this one's light." Miller, who had been advancing, froze, his rifle trained on Dusk's head. A hostage-taker, a cornered rat. The worst kind of problem. He couldn't risk the shot. The other surviving Raiders, seeing their commanders move, scrambled to seize hostages of their own, dragging Lumen in front of them as living shields at a standoff, frozen and lethal. Then, Elder Bright's voice whispered, not through the air, but directly into Miller's mind, a clear bell tone amid the chaos. "We are with you, Sergeant. Tell us what to do." Miller didn't speak. He simply thought it, pouring the idea into his own mind with crystal clarity. "When I give the signal, every lumen in this room must shine. As bright as they ever have. Brighter than the sun that he felt, rather than heard, the understanding flow back. A wave of serene acknowledgement from Bright and the 100 lumen on the hillside. Now connected psychically to their trapped kin, Miller slowly lowered his rifle, a gesture of apparent concession. He locked eyes with Dusk. "It's over, Commander. Your fleet is being carved apart above us. There's no escape. Surrender. You'll face Galactic Council justice." "Justice?" Dusk spat the word. "There is only power, and I still hold it." He shook the child, whose light was now guttering, growing faint. "You primitives from a mudball think you understand the void? You understand nothing." In that moment, the lumen child in Dusk's grasp did something extraordinary. Its light didn't flare. It vanished completely, snuffing out into absolute, lightless darkness, becoming a void in Dusk's arms. Shocked by the sudden, unnatural absence of the glow he was using as a visual anchor, Dusk's eyes flickered down for a split second. That IT was all Miller needed. That he fired. The stun round took Dusk square in the chest. The commander stiffened, his red eyes wide with shock, then collapsed, the pistol clattering from his grip. The child, its light returning in a soft, relieved pulse, scrambled away at IT the same instant. Miller sent the mental signal. Now every lumen hostage in the chamber of first light, and every lumen on the hillside outside, unleashed their inner radiance. The chamber was not illuminated. It was consumed by light, a pure, blinding, white-silver effulgence that had no source and every source, flooding every crystal facet, reflecting and amplifying until it was a physical force. The Raider guards cried out, clutching at their light-sensitive eyes, completely disoriented at that beautiful, terrifying blindness wrought of peace. The human soldiers moved with final, merciful efficiency. The remaining Raiders were subdued. The explosives were located and disarmed by a trembling but resolute lumen elder who understood the wiring in a way no human could. Silence descended, broken only by the soft, shuddering pulses of lumen light and the hum of equipment. Miller walked to the child, who was being comforted by an adult. He knelt. "You saved a lot of lives," he said softly. "How did you know to go dark?" The child looked up, its large eyes luminous. "I felt the thought from the elder, the thought of the predator who hides before the spring. To be safe, sometimes you must become the shadow." Miller nodded, a profound respect settling in his chest. They were learning from each other, adapting, evolving together in the heat of crisis. His comm buzzed. "Ground team status." Captain Rhee's voice was taut with the strain of her own battle. "Temple secured, Captain," Miller reported, surveying the chamber where humans and lumen now stood together amidst defeated foes. "Dusk in custody. All hostages safe. Charges disarmed." A moment of static, then Rhee's voice, softened by a fraction. "Well done, Sergeant. Raider fleet neutralized. The Scourge is adrift, its drive core in pieces. The Haven system is secure." 3 days later, the Galactic Council vessel Harmony entered the system with the caution of one approaching a dormant volcano. Aboard, Ambassador Gray and Admiral Pike watched on the observation deck as their shuttle approached the Nemesis for docking. The human ship hung in the void, its dark hull scarred with the fresh, carbon-scored wounds of battle. A silent testament to the violence it had both endured and delivered. Gray had expected a graveyard, a planet shrouded in mourning, a desperate salvage operation. He was unprepared for the reality. Raider hulks under the guard of the Nemesis's remaining fighter screen, and on the planet below, the coordinated, energetic buzz of a rebuilding civilization. Captain Rhee, her uniform crisp but her face bearing the subtle marks of exhaustion and command, met them in the docking bay. "Ambassador, Admiral, welcome to Haven." "Captain Rhee," Gray managed, performing the traditional greeting with numb fingers. "The Council, we offer our profound gratitude. The credit belongs to my crew and to the Lumen," Rhee replied, her tone leaving no room for argument. She gestured beside her. "But there is another you should thank." Elder Bright stepped forward. His light was not the soft glow of a victim, but the steady, powerful radiance of a leader. "Greetings," he said, his voice the resonant hum of a tuning fork. "The people of Haven welcome you." Gray was speechless. The psychological models, the xenological forecasts, all had predicted catastrophic trauma, a species shattered by the violence of its salvation. Instead, he saw resilience. "Elder Bright, we came prepared to offer evacuation, emergency aid, and we are grateful," Bright finished, a gentle pulse of amusement in his light. "But as you see, our human friends have helped us begin a different task: rebuilding." Later, on the planet's surface, walking through the bustling activity near the temple, Gray witnessed the impossible. Human engineers and Lumen lightweavers collaborating on clearing debris. Human medics working alongside Lumen healers whose touch seemed to soothe pain. Human children and Lumen young playing a game that involved both thrown stones and dancing light patterns. "I don't understand," Gray confessed to Miller as they walked. "Their nature abhors violence. Yours is capable of such profound ferocity. How is this harmony possible?" Miller watched a young human soldier patiently show a group of Lumen how to activate a distress beacon. "Ambassador, on Earth, we have a saying: speak softly and carry a big stick. We showed up with the biggest stick we had. But we only ever spoke one word to the Lumen: friend." They were smart enough to listen to the word, not fear the stick. Elder Bright joined them. "You see us as peaceful, Ambassador, and that is true. But peace without the strength to defend it is just an invitation to tyranny. The humans, they carry the strength so that others may keep the peace. We have learned that the capacity for violence does not define a soul. It is the choice to wield it only in defense of life that does." In their minds, we saw the darkness of the storm, yes, but we also saw the lightning rod that draws it away from the village. That evening, as Haven's twin moons rose, a ceremony unfolded in the temple gardens. Lumen performed their traditional light dance, bodies flowing and glowing in intricate, silent symphonies. The humans watched, their usual sternness softened by wonder. Gray found Captain Ree gazing at the stars, the celebratory lights reflecting in her eyes. "Your mission is a historic success, Captain. The Council will draft commendations." Ree shook her head slightly. "That's not why we came." "Then why?" Gray asked, the fundamental question finally voiced. "Why race into the unknown for a people you owed nothing?" Ree looked at him, and for the first time he saw past the commander to the human beneath. "Because they asked," she said, as if it were the simplest equation in the universe. "On Earth, for all our darkness and our light, that is the one thread that binds us. When the call for help goes out, we answer. It is our first and last commandment."